What if I told you that the reason you cannot seem to get ahead financially has nothing to do with your income, your education, your opportunities, or your effort? What if I told you that the real reason is that your body is chemically addicted to being broke? Not metaphorically addicted, chemically addicted. The same way a body becomes addicted to a substance, your nervous system has become addicted to the neurochemistry of financial struggle. The cortisol, the adrenaline, the anxiety, the constant low-grade panic of not having enough. Your body has been marinating in these chemicals for so long that it now depends on them to feel normal. And every time money starts flowing in, every time your financial situation begins to improve, your body does something that will shock you. It creates the circumstances to return you to poverty, not because you deserve to be broke, but because your nervous system needs the chemicals that poverty produces. And it will sabotage your wealth to get its fix. Neville Goddard taught that your state of consciousness determines your reality. But what he understood intuitively, neuroscience can now explain mechanically. Your state of consciousness is not just a mental event, it is a chemical event, and the chemicals of poverty are as addictive as any substance known to science. Today you are going to learn the 4 stages of poverty addiction, why your body fights wealth, the way an addict's body fights sobriety, and the exact method to break the chemical cycle that has been keeping you financially stuck for years. This is not motivation. This is neuroscience applied to your bank account, and it changes everything. To understand why your body is addicted to being broke, you need to know something about how neurochemistry creates behavioral loops. Every emotional state you experience produces a specific cocktail of chemicals in your body. Fear produces cortisol and adrenaline. Joy produces serotonin and dopamine. Peace produces oxytocin and endorphins. These chemicals are not passive byproducts of your emotions. They are active substances that your cells develop receptors for. And here is where it gets disturbing. When you experience the same emotional state repeatedly for months or years, your cells literally grow more receptors for those specific chemicals. They become more sensitive to them, more dependent on them, and when the supply of those chemicals decreases, your cells signal your brain that something is wrong. That signal feels like anxiety, like restlessness, like the vague sense that something bad is about to happen. And your brain, interpreting that signal as a genuine threat, creates the thoughts and behaviors necessary to restore the chemical supply. For someone addicted to the chemicals of poverty, that means creating financial problems, because financial problems produce cortisol. Cortisol feeds the receptors, and the receptors stop signaling distress. Your body literally manufactures financial crises to feed its chemical addiction. Dr. Joe Dispenza has documented this mechanism extensively. He explains that the body becomes the mind. After years of the same emotional patterns, your body begins to run the program independently of your conscious choice. You do not choose to be anxious about money. Your body demands the anxiety because it needs the chemicals, and your body is a far more powerful force than your conscious intention. This is why affirmations fail for most people. You can affirm abundance all morning while your body is screaming for its cortisol fix all afternoon. And the body always wins, always. Neville Goddard understood this at the level of state. He taught that you must change the state, not the thought. A thought is a mental event that your body can override. But a state is a full-body experience that includes the chemistry. When Neville said you must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, he was describing the exact process of changing your body's chemical demand from poverty chemicals to wealth chemicals. The feeling is the chemistry, and the chemistry is the addiction. Change the feeling, change the chemistry, break the addiction. Before I reveal the 4 stages of poverty addiction and how to break each one, hit the like button. That small act of coherence sends a signal to your nervous system that you are choosing a different response than the automatic one. Subscribe and turn on notifications, and write in the comments, "I break the addiction." Those 5 words are a declaration of chemical independence. Your body has been running the poverty program without your permission. Today you take back control. Do it now. The first stage of poverty addiction is called the chemical baseline, and it explains why you feel anxious even when nothing is wrong with your finances. Your body has a chemical set point, a specific cocktail of stress hormones that it considers normal. For most people who have struggled financially for years, that set point includes elevated cortisol, chronic low-grade adrenaline, and suppressed serotonin. This cocktail does not feel like an addiction. It feels like you. It feels like your personality. You describe yourself as a worrier, as someone who is realistic about money, as someone who does not get their hopes up. But those descriptions are not personality traits. They are symptoms of a chemical baseline calibrated for poverty. Have you ever received unexpected money, and instead of feeling relieved, felt more anxious? That paradoxical response is your chemical baseline in action. The unexpected money decreased your cortisol supply, and your body, missing its familiar chemicals, generated anxiety to restore the supply. It manufactured worry where none existed because it needed the chemistry of worry to feel normal. Think of it like a thermostat. Your chemical baseline is set to a specific temperature. When your financial situation improves and the emotional temperature rises above your set point, your body activates the cooling system. It produces anxious thoughts. It creates impulsive spending urges. It generates conflicts that drain your resources, all to bring your chemical temperature back to the set point where your body feels at home. A financial consultant in her early 50s described her chemical baseline with painful clarity. She told me, "I helped clients build wealth for 20 years while my own finances were a mess. I knew everything about money management, but every time my savings grew past a certain point, something happened. I would make an impulsive purchase, take on a client who did not pay, agree to a bad deal. It was not ignorance, it was something deeper. Something in my body could not tolerate the feeling of financial safety. Safety felt wrong. Struggle felt right. Not because I wanted to struggle, because my body needed the chemicals that struggle produced." Her expertise did not matter, because her chemical baseline overrode her knowledge. She could not build wealth, because her body needed poverty chemicals more than it needed a balanced bank account. The consequence of not recognizing your chemical baseline is that you attribute your financial patterns to character, intelligence, or luck, when they are actually driven by neurochemistry. What can you do? Start by noticing when financial peace makes you uncomfortable, when a good financial day triggers anxiety instead of relief, when the absence of money problems feels strangely unsettling. Those moments are your chemical baseline revealing itself. You are not crazy, you are not broken. You are chemically calibrated for poverty. And what was calibrated can be recalibrated. But the second stage explains why the addiction gets stronger every year. The second stage is called the reinforcement loop. And it is the mechanism that makes poverty addiction progressive, just like any other addiction. Every time your body successfully creates a financial crisis to restore its chemical supply, the neural pathway that connects financial crisis to chemical relief gets stronger. It is a feedback loop. Financial stress produces cortisol. Cortisol feeds the receptors. The receptors signal satisfaction. The brain records this sequence as successful. And the next time the body needs cortisol, the brain reaches for the financial stress pathway faster and more efficiently than before. After years of this loop, the pathway becomes so strong that it fires automatically. You do not decide to be stressed about money. The pathway fires before your conscious mind has a chance to intervene. You wake up and the first thought is about bills, not because you chose that thought, because the pathway delivered it automatically to trigger the cortisol release your cells demanded before you even opened your eyes. Neville Goddard addressed this when he spoke about the old man. The old man is the habitual state, the collection of automatic patterns that run your life without your conscious participation. He taught that the old man must die for the new man to be born. In neurochemical terms, the old man is the reinforcement loop, and its death is the breaking of the loop through persistent assumption of a new state. The reinforcement loop also explains why financial problems tend to escalate over time. Just like any addiction, your body develops tolerance. The same level of financial stress that used to produce enough cortisol no longer satisfies the receptors, so the body needs bigger crises, larger debts, more dramatic financial emergencies, not because your life is getting worse, because your addiction is getting stronger. A retired teacher in his early 60s described the escalation. He said, In my 30s, worrying about a $100 bill was enough to keep my anxiety going. By my 50s, it took a $5,000 crisis to produce the same feeling. The crises got bigger as I aged, not because I managed money worse, because my body needed a stronger dose. I was increasing my own dosage of financial stress without knowing it. The consequence of not breaking the reinforcement loop is that your financial crises will continue to escalate in severity and frequency as your body demands increasingly potent doses of poverty chemicals. What can you do? Every time you notice yourself creating or amplifying a financial problem, pause. Ask, is this a real threat, or is my body ordering its chemical fix? That question alone interrupts the loop. It does not break it permanently, but each interruption weakens the pathway by a fraction, and enough fractions eventually collapse the entire structure. There is a specific way the reinforcement loop manifests in financial decisions that you need to recognize. It disguises itself as prudence, as being responsible, as not getting your hopes up. When someone offers you a financial opportunity, the loop activates before you even evaluate it. Your body floods with caution chemicals. Your mind generates reasons why it will not work. Your gut tightens with something that feels like intuition, but is actually the loop protecting its supply chain. You call it being careful with money. But careful is not what your body is doing. Your body is ensuring that the opportunity does not succeed because success would decrease the cortisol supply. This is why financially addicted people consistently make decisions that keep them at the same level. They are not stupid. They are not unlucky. Their reinforcement loop is filtering every financial decision through the lens of what maintains the chemical supply. A good opportunity gets filtered out. A bad deal that guarantees more stress gets filtered in. Not consciously, neurochemically. And until you recognize the loop for what it is, you will continue mistaking its sabotage for your judgment. If this is changing how you understand your relationship with money, share this video with someone who blames themselves for their financial struggles. Because their struggle may not be a character flaw, it may be a chemical addiction that nobody told them they had. Subscribe because the upcoming videos will reveal advanced techniques for breaking each stage of this cycle permanently. The third stage is called the identity fusion. And it is the most dangerous of all because it makes the addiction invisible. After years of the reinforcement loop, the chemicals of poverty stop feeling like stress and start feeling like identity. You no longer experience financial anxiety as an emotion. You experience it as who you are. I am someone who struggles with money. I am not good with finances. People like me do not get rich. These statements feel like truth, like honest self-assessment, like humility, but they are not truth. They are the voice of an addiction that has fused with your sense of self. When an addiction becomes identity, it becomes almost impossible to treat, because you are no longer fighting a behavior. You are fighting who you believe you are, and nobody wants to fight themselves. Neville Goddard understood the centrality of identity in manifestation. He taught that you must change the I am before any external change can follow. I am wealthy must replace I am struggling, not as an affirmation layered on top of the old identity, as a genuine shift in the deepest sense of who you are. And this shift is what breaks the identity fusion. Because when you truly change your I am around money, you change the chemical order your body sends to the brain. A new I am produces a new chemical demand, and a new chemical demand produces new behaviors, new decisions, and new financial outcomes. Without effort, without willpower, without fighting the old patterns. The new identity simply does not need the old chemicals, and cells that do not receive their familiar chemicals eventually downregulate their receptors. The addiction literally starves. A business owner in her late 50s described the identity fusion breaking. She said, "For 40 years I said I am not a money person. It felt true. It felt like self-knowledge. When I started assuming I am someone for whom money flows naturally, my body revolted. Anxiety, insomnia, physical tension. It felt like I was lying. But I persisted, and after about 3 weeks something shifted. The tension dissolved, the anxiety faded, and for the first time, I am someone for whom money flows felt as true as I am not a money person used to feel. The old identity did not change. It died, and the new one was born in its place. Her physical symptoms, anxiety, insomnia, and tension, were withdrawal symptoms. Her body was losing its familiar chemical supply and protesting just like any addict in the early days of recovery. The 3 weeks of discomfort were the detox period, and the shift she felt at the end was the moment when the new identity's chemicals became the new baseline. The consequence of identity fusion is that you cannot see the addiction because it has become you. You defend your poverty identity as truth rather than recognizing it as a chemical program. What can you do? Examine every I am statement you make about money. I am bad with money. I am always broke by the end of the month. I am not the kind of person who has savings. Each statement is not truth. It is an instruction to your body to maintain the chemical baseline of poverty. Replace each one with a bridge statement that your body can accept without triggering massive resistance. I am learning to relate differently to money. I am discovering that money can feel safe. I am exploring what abundance feels like in my body. These bridges do not trigger the withdrawal response because they are gradual, but they begin shifting the chemical demand 1 degree at a time, and enough degrees change the entire temperature. There is something liberating about recognizing identity fusion that most people do not expect. When you realize that I am bad with money is not a truth, but a chemical instruction, something loosens inside you. The statement loses its weight, not because you denied it, because you reclassified it. It went from being a fact about your character to being a symptom of your chemistry. And symptoms can be treated. Facts cannot. That reclassification is the beginning of the end of identity fusion. You do not need to believe the new identity immediately. You just need to stop defending the old one as truth. Stop saying, I am bad with money, as if it were as factual as your height or your eye color. Start saying, my body was trained to feel bad about money. That shift from I am to my body was trained is the first crack in the fusion, and through that crack, a new identity can begin to grow. Now the 4th stage is where the addiction is finally broken and replaced with a new chemical pattern. The 4th stage is called the chemical reset, and it is the process of deliberately installing a new neurochemical baseline that corresponds to wealth instead of poverty. You already know that the minutes before sleep are the most powerful moment for subconscious programming. Now apply that knowledge to your neurochemistry. When you fall asleep in a state of financial peace, your body produces oxytocin and serotonin instead of cortisol and adrenaline. And for 8 hours, your cells are bathed in these new chemicals. Cells that were accustomed to poverty chemicals are suddenly receiving wealth chemicals. At first, they resist. The receptors for cortisol are plentiful and hungry. The receptors for serotonin are few and underdeveloped. But each night that you fall asleep in financial peace, 2 things happen simultaneously. The cortisol receptors begin to downregulate because they are not being fed. And the serotonin receptors begin to upregulate because they are receiving a new supply. After 7 to 10 nights of consistent practice, the ratio shifts. Not dramatically, but measurably. The cortisol receptors are slightly weaker, the serotonin receptors are slightly stronger, and that slight shift changes your waking experience. You feel slightly less anxious about money, slightly more open to financial opportunity, slightly less compelled to create crises. Each night of practice compounds the shift, like compound interest, but for your neurochemistry. And at some point, which varies from person to person but typically ranges from 3 to 8 weeks, the new baseline locks in. The serotonin receptors are now dominant, the cortisol receptors are diminished, and your body, for the first time in decades, does not need the chemicals of poverty to feel normal. It needs the chemicals of peace. And from that new need, a completely different financial life emerges. Not because you forced it, because your chemistry demanded it. Neville Goddard's technique of falling asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled is, from a neuroscience perspective, the most efficient method of chemical resetting that exists. 5 minutes of intentional feeling in the theta state before sleep has more neurochemical reprogramming power than an entire day of conscious effort. Because in theta, the blood-brain barrier is more permeable, the cells are more receptive, and the impression reaches deeper than any waking practice can access. A man in his late 50s described his chemical reset. He said, "The first week of falling asleep in financial peace was brutal. My body fought it. Anxiety surged right when I tried to relax about money, but I did not fight the anxiety. I just kept introducing the feeling of peace underneath it, night after night. By the second week, the anxiety was softer. By the third week, it was almost gone. And by the sixth week, I realized I had not worried about money in days. Not because I solved all my problems, because my body stopped needing the worry. The addiction was broken." What can you do tonight? Before sleep, practice cardiac coherence for 3 minutes. Then introduce the feeling of financial peace, not wealth, not millions. Peace, the quiet knowing that you have enough, that money is safe, that your financial life is handled. Hold that feeling as you drift into sleep. Your cells will receive the new chemicals. Your receptors will begin to shift. And by morning, the reset will have advanced by 1 more degree. 1 degree per night, compounded over weeks, until the poverty addiction is replaced by a wealth baseline that your body defends as fiercely as it once defended scarcity. There is one more aspect of the chemical reset that makes it uniquely powerful. Once your new baseline is established, it is self-reinforcing. The same mechanism that kept you trapped in poverty chemicals now works in your favor. Your body develops receptors for the wealth chemicals. It starts needing serotonin and oxytocin to feel normal. And when something threatens that supply, when a financial stressor appears that would have sent the old you into a cortisol spiral, your new body resists. It seeks to maintain its new chemical normal. It finds calm instead of panic. It creates solutions instead of crises. Not because you are trying harder, because your chemistry changed, and chemistry does not require willpower. It operates automatically. This means that the hardest part of the entire process is the first 3 to 4 weeks, the detox period. After that, the new baseline becomes self-sustaining. You stop needing to practice with the same intensity because your body is now addicted to the right chemicals, addicted to peace, addicted to financial calm, addicted to the quiet certainty that money flows. And an addiction to wealth chemicals produces wealth behaviors just as automatically as an addiction to poverty. Chemicals produced poverty behaviors. The same mechanism, the same neurological machinery, just running a different program. Now I want to guide you through the chemical reset experience. Close your eyes, relax your body completely. Take 3 slow breaths. With each exhale, acknowledge without judgment whatever financial stress you carry right now. You're not trying to fix it. You are acknowledging it. This stress is not a character flaw, it is a chemical pattern. It was installed without your consent. It reinforced itself without your awareness. It fused with your identity without your permission. And tonight, it begins to dissolve. Place your hand on your heart. Feel it beating. This heart has sustained you through every financial crisis your addiction ever manufactured. Every panic, every sleepless night about money, every moment of not enough. And you are still here, still breathing, still alive, 100% survival rate. Now from that place of survival, introduce the quietest, simplest feeling of financial safety, not wealth, safety. The feeling that right now, in this breath, you have enough. Let your body sit with that feeling. Notice the resistance, the part of you that says this is not true. That resistance is the addiction protesting. Let it protest. You do not need to fight it. Just keep the feeling of safety present underneath the protest, like a calm ocean beneath choppy waves. The waves are real, but the ocean is deeper, and the ocean always outlasts the waves. Stay here, breathing, feeling, not forcing, just allowing a new chemical reality to begin forming in your cells, 1 night at a time, 1 breath at a time, 1 degree at a time. When you open your eyes, know that something shifted, not visibly, chemically. The cortisol receptors received slightly less supply tonight. The serotonin receptors received slightly more. And that microscopic shift is the beginning of the end of a poverty addiction that has been running your financial life without your knowledge or consent. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, pay attention to your first financial thought. Is it worry, Anxiety? A calculation of what you owe? If it is, recognize it for what it is. The addiction placing its morning order. The old receptors sending their first signal of the day. And instead of obeying that signal, instead of beginning the daily cycle of financial stress that feeds the loop, pause. Take one breath. Place your hand on your heart and reintroduce the feeling of financial safety that you practiced last night. That morning reintroduction, combined with the nocturnal impression, creates a 24-hour cycle of chemical resetting. Night and morning. Night and morning. Two anchor points that gradually shift the entire day between them. The mornings get calmer, the days get lighter, the financial thoughts lose their sharp edges, and week by week, the person who was addicted to poverty quietly becomes someone who is addicted to peace. Not through willpower, through chemistry, not through force, through repetition, not through belief, through feeling. What you learned today is not motivation. It is the neurochemical mechanism behind every financial pattern you have ever experienced. Your chemical baseline determines your financial set point. The reinforcement loop strengthens the addiction with every crisis. The identity fusion makes the addiction invisible by disguising it as personality. And the chemical reset, practiced nightly in the theta state before sleep, gradually replaces poverty chemistry with wealth chemistry. This is what Neville Goddard was doing when he taught the feeling of the wish fulfilled. He was not performing a spiritual ritual. He was performing a neurochemical intervention. He was deliberately installing the chemistry of a new state and allowing his body to build a reality that matched the new chemistry. Not through force, through repetition, through the quiet persistence of someone who understood that the body is the final frontier of manifestation. You can change your thoughts in a second. You can change your feelings in a minute. But changing your chemistry takes weeks of consistent practice, and it is the chemistry that builds the reality. Everything else is preparation. Tonight, the preparation ends, and the real work begins. Not the work of effort, the work of feeling, the work of allowing your body to receive a chemical that it has been starving for beneath all the cortisol and all the adrenaline and all the manufactured crises. That chemical is peace, and peace compounded nightly over weeks becomes wealth. Not as a spiritual promise, as a neurochemical certainty. I want you to remember something as you go to sleep tonight. You did not choose this addiction. It was installed in you by years of financial stress that you had no control over. The household you grew up in, the economy you entered as an adult, the financial setbacks that compounded over time. None of it was your fault. But breaking the addiction is your responsibility, not your punishment, your responsibility. And responsibility is power. Because if breaking it is your responsibility, then breaking it is within your power. Nobody else needs to change. No circumstance needs to shift. No lottery needs to be won. Just your body. Just your chemistry. Just 5 minutes before sleep. Just the quiet, persistent introduction of a chemical that your cells forgot they could receive. Peace. Financial peace. The most radical substance you can introduce into a body, addicted to the chemicals of poverty. Write in the comments, "I break the poverty addiction," followed by one sentence describing the financial pattern you now recognize as chemical, not personal. When you name the pattern as chemical rather than personal, you take its power away. It stops being who you are and starts being what your body was doing. And what your body was doing can be undone. Share this video with every person who blames themselves for being broke. Because tonight they can learn that their struggle was never a character flaw. It was a chemical program. And chemical programs can be rewritten, one night at a time. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because in the next video, we will reveal the 3 signs that your poverty addiction is breaking and the specific morning practice that locks in the chemical reset you build each night. Do not miss it. Your body has been addicted to poverty. Tonight it begins its recovery. And recovery, once it starts, does not stop. It compounds. Until one day, wealth feels as natural as struggle once did, and you wonder how you ever lived any other way.